Here is your full expanded story. 2100 words, no headings, simple English, human and natural tone. Nadia was not supposed to be happy that day. She had spent the last 8 months trying to remember what happiness even felt like. It had been that long since she signed the divorce papers. That long since she finally packed 2 bags, called her friend Rania, and walked out of an apartment she had been afraid to leave for years. 8 months of therapy, of jumping at phone notifications, of checking her locks twice before bed. 8 months of slowly, carefully, learning how to breathe again. But that Saturday morning felt different. She woke up early. The sun was already coming through the curtains in a way that felt warm instead of intrusive. She made herself tea, stood by the kitchen window, and watched pigeons argue on a rooftop across the street. Small things, ordinary things, the kind of things she had forgotten to notice when she was too busy surviving. Rania had called the night before and suggested the market. There was a farmer's market that ran every weekend, not far from where Nadia now lived. Fresh vegetables, bread stalls, some handmade craft tables, a man who played old folk songs near the entrance. Rania had been going for months, and always came back with too many tomatoes and a good mood. "Come with me," she had said. "You need sunlight, you need normal." Nadia had almost said no. Old habit. But she said yes instead. They arrived just after 11. The market was already full of people. Families with strollers. Old men comparing apples. A group of teenagers eating something wrapped in paper. The smell of roasted nuts came from somewhere near the far end. Nadia held her bag against her side and walked slowly, looking at everything the way you look at something when you have been locked indoors for too long and the world suddenly feels a little too wide. But it was a good feeling. A new feeling. She bought sunflowers from a woman with soil still on her hands. She tried a small piece of cheese from a tray a vendor held out. She laughed, actually laughed, at something Rania said about a very serious-looking cabbage. For almost an hour, she forgot what she was still carrying inside her. She forgot the voice that used to follow her from room to room. She forgot the way a door slamming used to make her whole body go rigid. She forgot him. And then she did not forget anymore. She heard his voice before she saw him. It was just one word, her name, but her body knew it before her brain caught up. Her shoulders pulled in, her stomach dropped. The sunflowers in her hand suddenly felt very heavy. She turned slowly, and there he was, her ex-husband, standing between 2 vegetable stalls, looking at her like she was something that belonged to him and had wandered off without permission. He had been drinking. She could tell from the way he was standing. A little too still in the way drunk people go still when they are trying to look sober. His eyes were red at the edges. He was wearing the ring. Even now, after the divorce was finalized, after the papers had been signed and witnessed and filed away, he was still wearing the ring on his finger like it meant something. Like she was still his. "You look good," he said. The way he said it was not a compliment. Rania stepped forward slightly and said his name. Her voice was calm, but her hand found Nadia's arm. He looked at Rania, the way a person looks at an insect on a table, briefly, with irritation, and then looked back at Nadia. "I want to talk to you," he said. "Alone." "There's nothing to talk about," Nadia said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. 8 months of therapy, 8 months of practicing that sentence in her head. He closed the distance between them in 3 steps. He grabbed her by the wrist, the left one, the one that still ached sometimes in cold weather for reasons she never liked to think about too carefully, and he pulled her toward him. Not violently enough for a stranger walking past to understand what they were seeing, just enough to hurt. Just enough to remind her who he believed he still was to her. The market kept going around them. Someone walked past carrying a bag of oranges. A child nearby was asking for something sweet. A vendor called out a price. The world continued, completely indifferent, while Nadia stood in the middle of it being quietly, invisibly hurt. Rania grabbed his arm and told him to let go. He turned and shoved her. One sharp push, and she stumbled back into a display table. A few people looked over. No one moved. The moment stretched out the way bad moments do, slow and elastic, and Nadia felt the familiar cold weight of understanding that no one was going to do anything. People never did. She had learned that a long time ago, and then someone did. She did not hear him approach. She only became aware of him the way you become aware of weather changing, a shift in the air, a change in pressure. A man stepped beside her, tall, quiet, dressed simply, Nothing that would mark him out in a crowd. He was not young, but he was not old. He had the kind of face that had seen a great deal, and chosen not to comment on most of it. He had a stillness to him that was different from the stillness of the market around her. The market was still because it was indifferent. This man was still because he was completely, entirely in control. He looked at her ex-husband the way a person looks at a problem they have already solved. He did not raise his voice. He did not make a scene. He said something low enough that only the three of them could hear. Nadia would later try to remember exactly what the words were, and find that she could not quite retrieve them. What she remembered was the effect. Her ex-husband's grip on her wrist loosened immediately. The color left his face in a way she had never seen before. And she had known this man for 11 years, had seen him angry, drunk, cruel, sorry, charming, and everything in between. But she had never seen him afraid. Not like this. Not the way a person looks when they suddenly understand that something much larger than them has turned its attention their way. The man held out his hand, open palm, waiting. Nadia's ex-husband stared at that open hand for what felt like a long time. Then, slowly, he reached up and pulled the ring from his finger. He placed it in the man's palm without a word. The man closed his hand around it. He turned to Nadia and asked, quietly, if she was all right. She nodded, because she did not yet trust herself to speak. He looked at her for one moment longer. Not with pity, not with the triumphant look of someone expecting gratitude, just steadily, the way a person looks at someone they are making sure is okay. Then he walked away. A man near the entrance, who had been watching the whole thing from a slight distance, fell into step beside him, and they left. By the time 2 police officers arrived, drawn by a call Rania had managed to make while all of this was happening, her ex-husband was standing very quietly, with his hands at his sides. The ring was gone from his finger. He did not look frightening anymore. He looked like a man who had just been reminded, very clearly, of where the edges of the world were. He was taken in that afternoon. The protection order Nadia had filed, and then half believed would never matter, was suddenly very relevant to a great many people. She stood in the market for a few minutes after everything settled. Rania came and put an arm around her. Neither of them said anything for a while. The folk musician near the entrance was still playing. Somewhere, a baby was laughing. The sunflowers Nadia had bought were somehow still in her other hand, a little crushed now at the stems, but still there. That evening, Nadia sat on her sofa and stared at the wall. She did not know who the man was. She did not know his name, or why he had been at the market, or why he had chosen to step in when everyone else had kept walking. She knew only that something enormous had happened, and that she did not quite have the right words for it yet. A knock came at her door around 7. She opened it to find a man she had never seen before standing in the hallway. He was polite. He said nothing explanatory. He handed her a small envelope and left before she finished saying thank you. Inside the envelope was the ring. Beneath it was a small plain card with neat handwriting. It said, "He will not look for you again." Nadia held the ring in her palm for a long time. She thought about all the years she had watched that ring on his hand, and felt trapped by what it meant. She thought about all the times she had wished, quietly, and then loudly inside her own head, that someone would see what was happening. Not to fix it for her. She had done the hard work herself. The leaving, the filing, the rebuilding, all of it. But just to see it, to acknowledge it, to say, yes, I see this, and no, it is not acceptable. Weeks later, Rania sent her a link to a news article, a piece about a long-running investigation into an organized crime network operating across the city. There was a photograph. Nadia looked at the photograph for a while. Then she closed the laptop. She put the ring in a small box on her bookshelf, not as a reminder of the marriage, not as anything dark or heavy, but as a reminder of a Saturday morning in which the world, against all her experience and expectation, decided to show up for her. A reminder that sometimes the most unexpected person in the room is the one who chooses to act. A reminder that being seen, really seen, without ceremony, without hesitation, can matter more than almost anything else. She went back to the market the following Saturday. She bought sunflowers from the same woman with soil on her hands. The folk musician was there again, playing something slow and pleasant near the entrance. A child nearby was asking his father what kind of fruit a persimmon was. The vendor with the cheese samples smiled at her like she was a regular. She did not see the man again. She did not look for him. She had stopped waiting to be rescued a long time ago. That was not what that Saturday had been about anyway. She had already rescued herself. She had done the most frightening, most exhausting, most necessary thing a person can do. She had chosen her own life over someone else's hold on her. What had happened at the market was something smaller and larger at the same time. It was a stranger on an ordinary Saturday, deciding that what he saw in front of him was not something he was willing to walk past. It was a moment of accountability delivered quietly, without theater, without a single unnecessary word. It was someone handing back to her something she had not even known she still needed. The proof that what had happened to her was real, and visible, and wrong. She carried the sunflowers home. She put them in a glass of water on the kitchen windowsill, where the afternoon light hit them, and made them almost unbearably yellow and bright. She made herself tea. She stood by the window and watched the pigeons argue on the rooftop across the street. And for the first time in a very long time, longer than 8 months if she was being honest, longer even than the marriage itself, she felt something settle in her chest. Not happiness exactly. Something steadier than that. Something that did not need a name. She was going to be all right. She had known that for a while, of course, but it felt different now to know it. The way it feels different to hear a thing said out loud, by the world, on an ordinary Saturday morning, between the sunflowers and the folk music, in a language that needed no translation at all. You said, CO or description. Give me